Hey there, folks. Welcome back. As promised, I have as my guest right now, Rod Martin. Rod, welcome back.
Great to be here.
There's so much to talk about. Where do we begin? Miraculous rescue yesterday. I don't use the word miraculous lightly. It was a very, very, very big deal that we rescued that officer, that colonel, in the mountains of Iran for many reasons. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's the difference between our military and basically anybody we might fight. Our ethos is we don't care if we lose $300 million worth of equipment. We're going to get our guy. And we did, and we do, and we will continue to. It also is really telling that we've flown 13,000 sorties over Iran, 20,000 when you add in the IDF, and this is the first plane they've been able to shoot now. That's just, as you said, miraculous. All the more so when you consider this was an airplane that wouldn't have been operating in Iranian airspace if virtually all of their air defenses hadn't already been taken out. This is an F-15E. This isn't even an F-15EX. This is the E. It was built in 1989. I mean, it's been flying for most people's whole lifetime. And yeah, no stealth, no fancy electronics package, none of the things that you're used to seeing in American forces. It's only able to fly over their airspace because we've taken out all the Russian and Chinese air defenses. That's all gone. So they're down to a few things that you got to take out in detail, like man pads. If you've got what amounts to a Stinger missile that a single guy fires off his shoulder, yeah, I mean, we haven't taken all that out, but it is just unbelievable that we're at a point where we can fly 20,000 missions over Iran and only lose a single fighter jet. And in the course of this rescue, we also lost an A-10, but the guy parachuted to safety. We also lost a couple of C-130s. We blew those up ourselves because they got stuck in the ground wherever it was they landed. It's just remarkable. We basically invaded and fought a mini war to get one guy out of the mountains of Iran, and we're completely successful. And it's just a marvel. And I've been seeing people on social media from Europe in particular who are just mocking the idea that we would waste all this money to go after just one pilot. Yeah, that's why you guys are losers. This is who we are. And this is why our military fights better than any military in the history of the world. These guys know we have their back no matter what.
Well, now, tomorrow, President Trump has set a deadline, and he underscored it with some colorful language, and then mocked Allah, praise to Allah. He's mocking them and the demon god that they worship as they do these wicked things inspired by hell. But I guess the question is, I think a lot of people, and again, this is part of what I love about Trump, is the trash talking and the confusion so that they don't know what to think. I mean, they know some of what to think. They know this guy means business and it's scary and we better take it seriously, but he's also playing a game that it's the art of the deal. Mm-hmm. Where do you suppose this goes? Because I think most of us would love it if the Shah's son took over and the mullahs went away forever and ever. Amen. Where do you think it goes? What do you think is happening?
Well, first, I want to second your point about him just mocking their false god, because we had a bunch of our friends who were just horrified by this on social media over the last day. And if
you don't have a sense of humor, folks,
guys,
you're going to have some trouble. If you don't have a sense of humor, you're going to be in big trouble, especially with this president, because he's nonstop, winking and joking, and it's a way of communicating that appeals to me in particular. I love that. I tend to communicate in that way. And if you don't get that, if you're kind of flat-footed, the liberal left secularists are totally that way. They're just like old school marms. It's sad.
Just
but many Christians can be that way as well. They really don't. They don't seem to appreciate the edge.
You would think they would have read their Bible. I mean, he's just doing what Elijah was doing on the mount to the priests of Baal. And yeah, I imagine that Elijah had more than a few detractors in Israel. So, and for the same reasons. No, Trump is mocking this theocracy. He is absolutely trying to make them wet their pants. And absolutely sow confusion, make them wonder, this guy might do anything. What do we have to prepare for? Every single thing they planned for has been 180 degrees from what we've actually done. And plenty of reports from Beijing over the last few weeks of how we just caught the Chinese flat-footed. Every single thing they assumed about our approach to Iran turned out to be wrong, which really causes some problems for them in their planning for something like Taiwan. So, yeah, this is fascinating what we're watching. Trump is being hilarious. I know he was a little irreverent, but not the way you would have heard some of our friends say it. And most of all, we just don't know what he's going to do tomorrow. We don't really know what's going to happen on Tuesday. But all the pearl clutchers who are going on about how, that would be a war crime. No, it wouldn't. And, first of all, there is a treaty that makes some of that a war crime. We refused to sign it. We refused to sign it because it's stupid. And no American administration has signed on to that. We are still governed by two very specific international treaties about what targets are and are not in bounds. And everything the president is saying is within bounds based on the treaties we're actually a party to. And I would just ask some of these people, are you saying that when we blew up Nazi factories and Nazi power plants, we were committing war crimes? Because nobody says that, although Tucker Carlson might.
It's so baffling. I think, with this president, most of the people who trust him, who've learned to trust him, like the crazy. They like the fact that it's crazy working for us. It's crazy working for good against evil. Mm-hmm. And there has to be basically chaos in whatever's left of the Iranian leadership. I mean, I cannot imagine that they have any serious plan. They don't have a plan. They're just going to be trash talking back at us because they have nothing else.
They're just trying to wait us out, and they've seen that that'll work. Bush just beat the tar out of those guys in Iraq, and for that matter, the Taliban. But they just held on, and after a while, lo and behold, Biden leaves Afghanistan and $80 billion of U.S. military equipment behind to arm the Taliban. So that's a pretty good object lesson that America won't last. And we saw the same thing in Vietnam. We actually won the Vietnam War. We never lost a single engagement on the ground. We forced the North Vietnamese to sign a peace treaty that basically said, you get to bomb us anytime we transgress this. And then the Democrats cut off all aid to our allies. And so, yeah, the North Vietnamese army did what it could never do during the war for 20 years. They rolled up all of South Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia in a month because of the Democrats cutting off even gasoline for the Jeeps of our ally after wasting all that blood and treasure for all those years, apparently for nothing. And that's what these guys are counting on. The problem for them is Trump is going to have this wrapped up long before there's an opportunity for them to get a Democrat president to let them have their way. That's not happening anymore. There aren't going to be any pallets of cash anymore. And we're taking them out at an extraordinary rate. drone strikes on individual IRGC members in the streets. They are having to bring in Shia militias from Iraq just to man checkpoints. They are really toast. And I don't know what Trump will do in the next 2 to 3 weeks, but it is going to be amazing.
Well, that's the question, though. What is he going to do? What is he's deliberately keeping people guessing.
Yes,
and the literalists get uncomfortable with that because, well, he said this, but what about this? What about the, and this is where I think you have to say, look, we elected him. Basically, we need to trust him. That doesn't mean we don't question things and we don't, we still play a role, and we do have the legislative branch. But basically, what is the complaint? What is the big complaint that people have? People like Tucker Carlson and others, a number of others, is disturbing, really seem to be under the impression that he is fighting Israel's war. What do you say to those people?
No, that's just idiotic. This isn't even about Israel. Now, if you're Israel, it's about Israel. Certainly their point of view is that it's about Israel. They have been surrounded by Iranian proxy armies for decades in the form of Hezbollah and Hamas, and now increasingly the Houthis. And so, yeah, they want rid of the country on the planet that routinely says that it's going to blow them off the map. That's absolutely true. But that's not our perspective. We certainly don't want them to hurt Israel, but that's not why we're doing this. We're doing this because the Iranians just demonstrated that they lie about everything. They claimed they only had ballistic missiles that could reach Israel or whatever. Wrong. Turns out they have ballistic missiles that they fired at Diego Garcia, which means they're in range of Paris and London. If you are that close to the United States, you add one more stage to that rocket and you're hitting Kansas City. And that's the real issue, because they're also openly telling you they intend to build 20,000 of these ballistic missiles, which is actually more than Russia or China has. So why would they do that? Well, partly to give cover to the nuclear program they have consistently lied about, partly to give cover to Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. There's not a single armed conflict in the Middle East that isn't armed, directed, and funded from Tehran, and that ties down American forces in the Middle East that shouldn't have to be there, just like they really shouldn't have to be in Germany. They ought to be in Guam and Japan and Korea and the Philippines, guarding us against the Chinese. They certainly shouldn't have to be in places where there is a head of the snake you can actually lop off. So that's what we're doing here. This is about China. This is about reducing America's footprint in the Middle East. And in a perfect world, and we'll see if this happens, it may not happen, but we're hopeful, and I think it can. If Iran is free, it becomes a vastly wealthy country very rapidly. The resources are off the chart. The education level of the people is super high. This is an entrepreneurial people that has been suppressed by socialism now for half a century. Just unleash them, give them freedom. This will be a beacon to the world and a great U.S. ally again. So we won't have to be all over the Middle East, and that's worth all of this by itself.
And of course, there are many Christians in Iran who would love to rise up and worship freely, which they certainly cannot do now. Here's a simple question. Maybe there's no answer, but what I don't understand, if we don't get our oil via the Straits of Hormuz, why are gas prices going up? Why have gas prices gone up in the United States? I don't get that.
Well, that's a more interesting question than it might seem at first glance, because the simple answer you're going to get from everybody on television is, well, it's a global market. Well, it is a global market, and that's true. Our prices are affected by what happens to Brent crude, And that has been true now since the 70s. The problem with that is if the Europeans don't want to protect their oil, or if Trump just decided, you know what, we're going to leave the strait closed. Maybe we'll set up a toll booth. Good luck with that. If he were to do that, you would see the global market fracture. And as a result of that, WTI, West Texas Intermediate, the main price on this continent, would collapse comparatively. Brent would soar. The whole rest of the world would go into a recession or depression very quickly because all those countries are deeply dependent on Middle Eastern supply. Since we aren't, the only part of the United States that is still dependent on Middle Eastern supply is California, because they've chosen to just stop producing meaningful amounts of energy and building meaningful power plants that aren't just bird blenders making the hills ugly. So they actually have a problem. Real America doesn't. And if you had that divergence in global oil markets, if you had that fracturing, it would be a catastrophe for the allies who refuse to even send minesweepers to help us with the strait.
All right, when we come back, I want to talk to you about the quote-unquote allies in quote-unquote NATO, which I believe stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Yes. The New York Times, they got that wrong, but they've gotten a lot of stuff wrong. We'll be right back.
For the first time ever, we're bringing you MyPillow mattresses and mattress toppers for as low as $99.98. Remember, sleep's all about temperature and pressure points. Whatever sleep needs you have, we have the right technology for you. Like our MyPillow mattress topper, our queen size has over 10,000 individual comfort supports to help relieve your pressure points. And how about our 3-inch Hybrid Plus mattress topper? It's infused with copper and silver to help your body get the restorative sleep it needs. And our MyPillow and Case Coil mattresses, I personally helped develop these mattresses to make sure they have everything needed to give us great sleep. Plus, they're made right here in the USA, and they ship right to your front door, absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to get MyPillow mattresses and toppers for as low as $99.98 and free shipping.
Welcome back, talking to Rod Martin. Okay, Rod Martin, did you answer my question about why are gas prices up? If we don't get oil from the Strait of Hormuz, what is it in layman's language?
Well, as things stand, it's a global market. So an effect on supply anywhere affects the prices everywhere to some degree. Certainly not as much in the United States as in China. China has gas lines as we speak. People are having to line up, their cars going down the block just to get a tank of gas. We're certainly not experiencing anything like that. But those of us...
we did experience that in the United States, but at the same time, we were on the verge of disco fever. So It kind of worked out. It kind of worked out.
Well,
yeah.
And what happened in between is China became the world's largest importer, and we became the world's largest producer. We now produce more oil than Russia and Saudi Arabia combined. So again, as we were saying in the prior segment, if the allies don't want to step up and help protect their own oil supply, one of the decisions that is at Trump's disposal is to just say, okay, fine, you're on your own. And the result of that would be this divergence in what is currently a global market that would dramatically reduce U.S. prices at the expense of everyone else. Their prices would soar through the roof.
But a global depression would also hurt us to some extent because it's not quite a zero-sum game. As you say, it's a global market.
I'm not advocating it. I'm saying that this is the thing that nobody thinks about because America made it a global market. That was a deliberate choice in the 70s to protect our allies from the Soviets, and we're still doing it, and it's still a good idea, but it's also altruistic to a degree that some of our allies don't seem to deserve anymore, and it might be a little funny to let them figure it out.
Well, that's okay. That's my question. So, I have for a long time been saying that NATO to me becomes meaningless. The Soviet Union doesn't exist. I don't understand why NATO exists. I also don't understand why these people are our allies, or we call them our allies, when our values are dramatically different from theirs. Western Europe has gone to hell in a handbasket. The leaders, Starmer and Macron, and Merz. I mean, I don't know what they stand for or what they believe, but would it be possible? Would it make sense for Trump to officially distance us from NATO, or is that just typical kind of trash talking to kind of, I don't know, soften them up for whatever we're going to do?
I think we're a little beyond trash talking at this point, not all the way to action, but closer than we have ever been in 80 years. I mean, the reality is we pay more than 70% of the cost of defending the alliance. If anybody can come up with something that Europe adds to our defense, I will be impressed. I can't think of what it would be. Germany, from time to time, has to train its infantry with broomsticks because they haven't bothered to buy enough rifles. Great Britain now has almost twice as many admirals as warships. We just found out in a parliamentary disclosure that Britain's frigates can't operate in the Middle East because engines break down in warm water.
I think you shared that on the program. Well, then explain it to me. There has to be a reason for us. There's at least some reason for us to put up with this nonsense.
Yes,
but I don't quite get it. In other words, what is it? What do we get out of this? Because as a taxpayer, I'd like to know why we are in Europe. What are we doing there? What's going on?
Just in general, it's better to have allies than enemies. And just in general, it's better to have people who are contractually obligated to be with you than not. The problem comes in where they don't mean it, where their word is no good. And that's what just changed. For all these years, we've listened to the Europeans look down on us and treat us like the hillbilly cousins. And, okay, we can put up with that. We're big boys. We can deal. But now we're actually in a major conflict, and all we're asking of them is a little bit of help with minesweeping. We're talking about very minor help, escorting a few oil tankers, and we would actually have to protect their minesweepers and their frigates. So there's that too. We just need a few more holes in the water, and they're saying no. And it's worse than that. They denied us overflight rights. Well, what kind of ally?
Excuse me. We're going to go to a break. We'll be right back. More with Rod Martin. Hey, folks, before we get back to our guests, I just want to say a lot of people donate when there's a headline, but MDA, Magen David Adom, doesn't get to slow down when the news cycle moves on. MDA is Israel's national EMS system. That means emergencies don't stop today, tomorrow, next month. Heart attacks, accidents, trauma, surgeries, blood shortages, they're constant. Keeping that system strong requires ongoing support. When you give to the American Friends of Magen David Adom, you're funding the basics that make everything else possible. Ambulances on the road, blood banks for trauma and surgery, training for first responders, and equipment that's used every single shift. This is not symbolic giving. This is practical, life-saving support. If you want your donation to have direct, measurable impact, this is one of the clearest ways to do it. Go to savinglifeisrael.org. That's savinglifeisrael.org. Welcome back, talking to Rod Martin. You just said they denied us overflight rights. Is that what you said?
Yeah, if we can't even fly over French territory to get where we're going, in what possible sense are they an ally? I mean,
first of all, why would they do that? In other words, let's look at it from their point of view, even if they're wrong. What would they say? Why?
Well, I think the French would probably be pretty straightforward about the fact that they want to make a deal with Tehran. They don't want to poke the bear. Part of that is their own domestic Muslim immigration problem. Part of that is they just don't want to be in anything that could possibly turn into a conflict for them. They just want the oil to flow. And if that means making a deal with the devil, they're perfectly fine with it.
Right. It's like they were willing to do that with Hitler. Nothing's changed. They're cowards.
Yeah.
How pathetic, honestly. It seems like Starmer in the UK is similar.
Yes. But
and Germany is similar.
And that brings us back to the values issue you raised. And we see this across much of Europe. But let's just look at the UK, which is supposedly the birthplace of modern views of liberty. You know, our founding fathers were fighting for their rights as Englishmen under the English Bill of Rights promulgated a century before. And this is absolutely historically a wonderful place for freedom. And yet, Keir Starmer has arrested 10 times as many people for their free speech expressed online as Vladimir Putin has in Russia. 10 times as many arrests. If you're a grandmother posting a meme about the rape gangs, there's a decent chance that you'll be in jail. The rape gangs never will be. And this is just unconscionable. It's unfathomable. And Canada just topped them. If you quote the Bible on homosexuality in Canada today, you're a criminal. And so they are actually criminalizing our faith and pretending to be a free country. There's nothing free about that. And I don't know why we'd want to defend it.
Where do you see this going? Because I would like to think that, we could help rescue Europe from itself or from its cowardly leaders. I don't know where Greece stands. I know that Meloni in Italy is a hero, Orban in Hungary. There are some good folks over there. Do you think Trump is thinking about this? I guess maybe he's not thinking this far ahead. He's just thinking about opening up the straits.
No. And in fact, he's thinking about opening the straits very slowly to bring this issue to a head. That's actually the main reason we haven't already opened the straits. So, we are forcing them to deal with their lack of ability to deal with a crisis that primarily affects them. And we are forcing a rethink of the alliance. And I guarantee you, Donald Trump's aim is not to end NATO, though he might. Donald Trump's aim is to get these guys to wake up and realize we really are better together, but this isn't working for the partner that's actually paying. This is only working for the freeloaders. Maybe we need to step up and be serious countries again. That's what's happening. And I don't know how that's going to play out, but here's where it ends up. It ends up in eventually a general election in the UK that Nigel Farage probably wins. It ends in an election in Germany that probably destabilizes Merz's coalition and possibly replaces him with somebody better. It ends in an election in France that is increasingly looking like it's going to Marie Le Pen's party. And if you actually start having the equivalent of Geert Wilders in all these other countries, the whole game changes. And suddenly you actually have partners, not dependents, which is the whole aim of the Trump doctrine.
I mean, that would just be shocking if some of the names you've mentioned were elected. What an outrageous blessing that would be. It's hard for me even to think about it because it would be so wonderful. But we know it's not going. None of this good stuff's going to happen under Starmer any more than it's going to happen under Mamdani in New York. That you need new leadership. But it seems like what you're saying is that Trump is allowing them to feel the pain so that they will get serious. At least that's what it sounds like.
Unquestionably. And look, if NATO really is going to go away, and we hope not, but that's actually a completely valid option at this point. If that were true, then I think that the right course for Trump would be to press the case of the Chagos Islanders, the British ethnically cleansed out of their own islands, send them back, declare them independent, and cut a deal with them to take Diego Garcia. That would be perfect.
Okay, we're out of time. I hate to say that. Rod Martin, always a joy to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.